So I just watched one of Elise's videos about mob mentality, and I feel sick to my stomach. I partly I feel sick because I get righteously indignant, and I am the type of person to bully a bully. Not bully a bully, but confront a bully, especially like if it happens to myself. I'm kind of like, I'll make some like snide remark and be like, yeah, whatever. But when it happens to somebody else, I get incredibly, like, I become like a mother bear. I don't know if I've mentioned it on this channel before, but I was actually, I kid you not, my parents caught on to the fact that I was trying to kill myself. And I was locked up in the children's hospital for it. And mind you, this is while I'm in high school. And I ended up missing a month of school. And I went back to school, and in my class there were these three girls. They weren't really popular, but they treated everyone as if they were less than them. And you know, they were relative. They got good grades, and they just had their clique, and you weren't allowed to be, well, like they would just kind of like scoff at you, but they weren't. And they would treat themselves as if they were all that, but really they weren't. And they would tend to pick on me. And, you know, I'd make some type of snide remark. But it really didn't affect me that much. And my suicidal stuff, had nothing to do with that. Not in the slightest. It had to do with problems going on at home. But I came back to school, and this one girl comes up to me in math class. Well, actually, I was helping her through the work, and I was teaching. Because I kind of became like a teacher's assistant almost. I was I was always ahead in maths class. So instead of giving me more work, my teacher just said, "Oh, help some other student out." So that's what I would do. And this one student felt rather nervous, but she ended up coming out and saying, "Those three girls," like, she said, "you're the only one who can stand up to them." And like, standing up to them, was what she saw as standing up to them was me saying, "Yeah, like you're all that," something along those lines. And just being like, whatever. And everybody else just kind of like let these girls have their way and believe that they were all that, but nobody would hang out with them. And she said, while you were gone for this last month... Oh, and the other thing was nobody actually knew why I was gone for a month. Like, somebody asked, and I was just like, what's it to you? Like, I don't really care. But she said to me, "You're the only one who can stand up to those girls." And this one girl got bullied so much they bullied this one other girl so much while you were gone that she had to move homerooms. And I'm pretty I went up to another girl that she was friends with, and I said, "Is this true?" And they said, "Yeah." And I went straight up to those girls and put them in their place. we were all in the same English and maths class, and I think science class at the time. I'm not sure, but we, anyway, so our English teacher would call them the three witches, and the remark I made to them was, I said, how dare you bully Daniela out of this class, like, and I ended up saying, you do realise Horden I said, anyway, so I said to them, you do realise, and then I mentioned the teacher's name. He's like, for our English class, he only calls you the three witches because he would get into trouble. Wait. I said, you're only called the three witches because... Oh, no, he didn't really want to call you the three witches. But he had to replace the B with a W, otherwise he'd get fired. And... yeah. And I'm kind of... that made everybody laugh. I got called into the coordinator's office. Oh, no, I didn't get called into the coordinator's office for that. But I got, what happened was our maths teacher, she then said, oh, Brittany, you can't be saying that. And everyone turned around and said, well, actually, he does call her the three witches. And so I got away with it. But I think this is the type of person I am. I understand why people would want to see justice when something gets done. If you've been cheated on in the past, I understand that if you hear some celebrity gets cheated on, then that's closer to home for you because you've experienced a similar feeling. But yeah, something Elise mentioned was that there was 100,000 comments on this one girl who had cheated on her boyfriend, and she was saying it's not like she's going to read through every single one of those comments on her channel, and how everybody was just dogpiling on her. It's a bit like, well, do you have anything constructive to say? No. So she's just going to look through and say, oh, 100,000 people hate my guts and think I should die, and she ended up doing that. And I know for myself, I don't need 100,000 people to say that for me. For me, I go into that dark place thinking about what my parents were like to me when I was younger. I go into that dark place where, to preface this, I am religious. I do believe that God exists. And I go into that dark place when I have this gut feeling that God doesn't love me. And that is purely because, I don't know, just because I'm not good enough, or, I'll go to my religious meetings and they mention something and it just, or somebody I care about says something, just says a comment, and it may not even be to me, because at our meetings there's a question and answer, section, and it's like a switch that flicks in my mind, and it's a bit like, and it will cut to my core, and it's, and the reason why things like that have such an effect on me is because partly because I have borderline personality disorder, and partly because I never fully addressed my suicidal tendencies, and I haven't yet fully eliminated the what's it called? I haven't fully yet eliminated the hurt I've had in the past in relation to that. It's kind of like when I was in high school, I would have these like binders in my mind. I would try to go to sleep and I would have to analyze everything about everyone that I spoke to, because I must have done something wrong, because I'm not lovable, and I know that because I tried to get my dad's attention that day and my dad didn't give me attention, or I got a really good grade at school and my mum said, oh yeah, whatever. And and my parents weren't emotionally there for me, and and the theory that was mentioned in our household was that God has put parents in charge of the children. So if my parents didn't approve of me, then God doesn't approve of me. And I've tried to deal with those things, and I deal with those issues as best as I can, but it's still not gone. And what would happen was I would analyze every little detail I did, and every person I knew in my life, in my mind, had their own like folder. And what I would do is, when I would try to go to sleep, I'd be like, okay, who did I interact with today? Let's say it was, first person I had to interact with today was not today. When I was in high school. First person who I had to interact with today was Mum, as an example. And I would write down everything possible that I had learnt that day, and there was almost like this visual display, and it would go through things, and then after I'd watched of everything that I know about my mum, and after I'd watched it, I'd flick to the back and there'd be more paper, and I'd write down things that I don't know as a fact but could be possible, and I would watch it, and I would keep on watching and writing until I was satisfied with it. And then I'd say, okay, next person I saw, and it may have been my brother, and it would have been like, okay, what do I know for a fact? This happened, this happened, this happened. What did I learn that could be a possibility? This isn't confirmed, but these things could possibly be true. Watch it, repeat, watch, repeat, watch, repeat. Okay, who was the first person I saw at school? It was this friend. How much did I interact with this person? And it went on every night. And I know my ex, one time we were talking about stuff, and he mentioned something, and I just went psychotic. And I don't even remember what it was he said. I don't remember how I reacted, but all he said is, crap, we've dreaded up some, not crap, but it was a bit like, okay, and it's like, I can't remember what he said, but I know he said PTSD. He said, oh, we've okay, this is really serious, there's some PTSD thing going on here. Something along those lines. And just because I was unconsolable, and even my dad nowadays will say, don't go to anyone else about your mental problems, because then they're going to run away and you won't have any friends. And it happens a lot. I am a really ugly person to be around when I'm on my lows. And I noticed a lot of people dismiss me altogether because of that. And they don't know that when I'm okay, I can make up for the times when I'm down. And I can be a bit, and I have good points too. Or if they even notice the good points, they then say, nah, it's not worth it. I've seen that a lot in my life, a lot. And I know Elise said that she couldn't even begin to imagine 100,000 people telling her all of the horrible comments that she saw on this other person's apology video. I know, it can really hurt. And she was talking about how the same people who were condemning her for calling her all sorts of nasty names under the sun. Not a lazy. They were condemning this other chick who then committed suicide. Like the day before, we're saying how horrible she was, and I don't want to repeat the words Elise used because I don't really want to have those words on my channel, but to then the next day being all, oh, I wish she survived. She, like, and I think she said hashtag be kind. And it was trending, and how everyone was saying, oh, she didn't deserve to lose her life. And it's a little bit like, when I know with myself, for myself, if the last time anyone interacted with me was negative, I don't want them at my funeral. Like, if any, and I remember telling this to my dad. He says, well, you're not gonna be alive, so you have no say in it. And I just remember thinking, I want somebody to almost be a gatekeeper for who genuinely gets to grieve for me together. There's one woman who saw me who I saw as an auntie. And a member of her family harassed me. And what I told him, was, you're just a kid. You weren't in your right mind. You couldn't even, I kicked you off and he couldn't even sit up straight. But something he said was, he put a pillow over my head and said, time not to breathe anymore, time not to breathe anymore. And the next time I actually saw him once. The next time I saw him after that, we were in a very public setting, and I didn't feel it was the right opportunity. But the next time after was at my dad's place, and I told him, if you ever do it again, or I find out you've done it to somebody else, you bet I'm bringing down the hammer. But if there is nobody else that this has happened to, that you've done this to, I'll leave it alone. Like, for the most part, he's a good kid. I actually said it the other way around. I told him, look, you're a good kid. You didn't mean to do what you did. I don't think you meant to do what you did. And what went through my mind was, I don't want him to go to jail over this. I don't want him to be condemned by the public for doing one stupid thing as a young teenager. And I told him, but if I find out you've done it to anyone else, or in your past, or if you do it to anyone else in your future, that's it. I'm bringing down the hammer, and everybody's going to find out. Sure enough, one time at his place, he was incredibly intoxicated. And a friend of mine said that he said the exact same thing, except it was a cushion that he put over her face. And she then turned around and also said, oh, but he wasn't on top of me. Well, what she said was that it wasn't as bad because he wasn't positioned the same, and I just lost it. And that family member that I looked up to as an auntie could not look at me the same way. All because I stayed true to my promise. And what happened? When I was finally trying to express what was going on, because she didn't know about the other girl, or what I said to him at my dad's place. She didn't know. And as it stands, our last interaction is her telling me off for being malicious. And me having an epileptic fit. She witnessed me having an epileptic fit. And she stood up and walked away. Somebody else saw all this, called the ambulance. We actually had somebody there to moderate this whole thing, because she turned around and said, I don't trust her. I've asked these other people to be here because, I need proof of what you say. I don't want you harassing me. She said this about me. And I had a seizure. And by the time I came through, she was gone. And all I was told was, she says she forgives you, but she's going to cross the street if she sees you. I didn't get to say why I did it. And she doesn't care. And the reason why it hurts me so much is because I've always been the type of person to give up my life for people, including her. Heck, including her relative. In my mind, there was no more of an issue as long as he hadn't done it to anyone else. And if he had, well then that needed to be addressed, but not with me. I don't know, the proper chat, I would have given testimony or whatever, but not judged by me, judged by the proper channels. And because as it stands, the very latest interaction that we've had with each other, or that she's had with me, was watching my convulsing body and walking up and leaving and saying and just being like, well, if she survives, then it's fine. I wouldn't want her at my funeral. And I kind of have this up to say that, to say, so that if one day I am gone, that the people who actually care can distinguish between about me, and who know what I've gone through, can distinguish and say, your last interaction with her was heartbreaking, and you didn't care if she was alive. Something else was more important. I even have family members that fall into that category. My ex falls into that category. The last interaction he had with me was, how dare you say that kid was intoxicated? He hanged up and he never had anything to do with me again. I wouldn't want half of my mum's side of the family to be there. Not half, but a good amount, including my mum. She would give all sorts of arguments as to why she loved me. Oh, I only ate organic food when I was pregnant with her, and I always bought the best food for my kids, and I made sure they were enrolled in Italian school, and we went to Italy as a family. It's a bit like, well, yeah, but you also found out I had overdosed and was in the ER and used it as an excuse to get money out of my dad. Your husband. Oh, just forgive everything she's done. Play happy little Italian family. Bull crap, she doesn't care if I'm alive. She cares more about other people's opinions of her. So she has to play the grieving wife. Or the grieving mum. I don't know. the ones who reach out to me and say, hey, I was thinking about you, they can come. That's the thing at the end of the day. I hate hypocrites. Don't act like if your opinion can change overnight, you don't value that opinion. Think about it. And I'm not talking of, well, if they're guilty or if they're not guilty about something. Like, if somebody's accused of, I don't know, robbing a store, what does that have to do with you? Not an awful lot. They end up going to jail, okay. Or somebody's accused of, that person could be accused of robbing a store and not have actually robbed the store, it's somebody else. Well, you let them back into society, you don't treat them as if they robbed that store. But, a lot of people can't handle me. A lot of people treat me like I'm a freak. I don't really want that for myself anymore. You know, I don't want anything like oh, this girl who was bullied her whole life, maybe if we were a bit nicer to her. It's like, well, you should have thought of that when you were being so crappy. And by the same token, the amount of people who are going to be like, oh, what a shame she had borderline. I know one of my uncles was saying, don't tell me depression isn't real because I had to see a shrink for 6 months. I'm like, well, don't tell me borderline isn't real. I've had to see shrinks since I was 5. And I don't like it anymore. I really don't. I think when it comes to mental disorders, everybody's quick to say they've got depression. Or they might see a shrink for psych months. They might see a shrink or a psych for 6 months and turn around and say, I know everything about psychology. It's a bit like, bro, you don't have to live with potentially having an epileptic fit every second day. You don't have to live with the idea that everything's going to end and you're worth nothing. You don't go into these crazy blackouts where you're crying and screaming and you can't even remember. You know, because of the virus, we can't go to our religious meetings anymore, but we're having them online, and but when I was there, because I would make sure I get to every meeting. Whenever people say, "Oh, she wasn't here," I went to another con. Hated when people would tell me off for not being there. One friend of mine didn't invite me to her wedding because I wasn't going to the meetings. She didn't know that I was sacrificing my time to go and make sure one of my other cousins, who lives on the other side of town, got to his meeting by picking him up and taking him every week. But because I wasn't in Hong Kong, I wasn't going to Hong Kong, I wasn't going to the meetings and wasn't invited. One of my friends said to me, "Oh, and what would happen is when that switch flicks, I just start crying and screaming and I can't handle things, and I end up shoving paper towel in my mouth and just screaming and crying and pulling my hair out, and I would do it in the car, or when I was little I would go into a bathroom stall and just cry and cry and cry, and if I heard somebody come in I would tuck my feet, pull up my feet so that somebody just thought the door was closed because the toilet was out of order or whatever. And wait for them to leave and just feel this heaviness in my head and almost like I'm gonna pass out. Sometimes people could hear me crying and they just avoid the room altogether. And then I would end up going outside or in the car and just crying like there's no tomorrow. And I remember one of my friends saying, "Why do you even come if you're going to be this bad?" Do you know what I said to her? If every time this was going to happen, I didn't rock up, I would not be here at all. That's just something she didn't really understand. It's almost like that's the thing, you have to live with it every day. Every bloody day when you're out like this. Does it mean I'm going to kill myself anytime soon? I don't know. All I know is I'm not stable. And the amount of people who use that as a reason for anything, it just makes me want to break my head open. But I am. This is my standard. This is my values. If the day before I die, you haven't come to make amends with me, then don't bother. Then don't bother. With the exception of, I don't know, like, because I've been to funerals of people I didn't really know. But it was the case of one of my friend's grandparents, or my cousin's grandparents on the other side of the family. And this is something I really thought of. And a lot more recently, because one of my cousins, her other grandfather died, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, if my other grandmother died, who exactly from the family would come and be of encouragement to me? Who? Chances are nobody would tell them in the first place. Or what I would do, because even if they did, who would? You know? My mum's almost like, I'm never going to speak to my mum's view is she's never going to speak to my dad's side again, and my dad's view is, I'll never speak to, her side ever again, and it's a bit like, whatever. There's a lot of people I've tried to be there for. And I know it would sound hypocritical, but if my ex died, I'd go. Because over our last interaction, I actually need to double check the text messages I sent him, because I did send him some text messages afterwards, after that phone call, and they were pretty gruesome. But I can't. I've written I'm sorry letters, but I don't know if I can't remember if I sent and I'm sorry texts, but I can't remember if I've sent them or not. So if I haven't sent them, I'm going to send them now, like after this. Like I said with that other woman, all I had the chance was to say was, I'm sorry, and then, ooh. I don't know. Yeah, that's that. I don't, unless you're coming to be of comfort to somebody else there, I don't know. Comfort my brother some other time. If you really want to be there for my brother, comfort him some other time. My dad show up. I don't even know if my dad would want it. You want to be respectful to me? I don't know, because if you want to show me respect, you haven't attempted to make amends, then just don't rock up. Just don't. And that's a standard I'm going to live by as well. I think it's different if you've tried to make amends and the other person hasn't. You know, the Bible says, if you go to offer your gift at the temple and you find out your brother has something against you, leave your offering there. Leave your offering at the altar. Go and sort things out with your brother and then offer up your sacrifice. If your brother has something against you, words to think about. I don't know, I've always tried to implement them, but what else? I've pretty much burnt the bridges on my mum's side of the family. That's fine. They want to see me as a BPD psycho, then go ahead. Oh, it must be so hard, but whatever. I feel so sorry for people who accuse celebrities of things when they haven't actually done them. Like, if they've done them, then okay, wait for the court to sort them out. They'll go to jail or they'll do community service or whatever. They're innocent, they don't deserve anything. And that's not to say I'm not innocent. Trust me, I've had my punishments plenty. I've done a lot of wrong things. But I'm too much to handle and I'm psycho. So, fun times. I'm gonna go because I've had enough. Probably gonna try and sleep this off because I am going to be completely unable to do anything today. This has been fun.